Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fictitious Dark, where we explore the line between the truth and the fictitious. I'm Josiah, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Rick.
I'm Brandon.
And today we're doing an umbrella topic, as I like to say. Kind of similar to what we did with Aliens, where we went off and explored a lot of different areas that could relate to such a possible topic. But I think today, what I wanted us to discuss are everything to do with the creepiest thing that anyone can think of, national parks. You know, you go in, you see the geysers, you see the trees, maybe you see a bear if you're lucky. What about national parks could be nefarious or weird that we would have to talk about, guys?
A lot.
Maybe the fact of all the missing persons cases that happen in the national parks.
Maybe a little have to do with like a little conspiracy theory topic that people like to talk about, Bohemian Grove, having to do with national parks.
Maybe Teddy Roosevelt?
Maybe Teddy Roosevelt knows about Sasquatch, and more importantly, I can hear that algorithm hitting. Skinwalkers. No.
Always goes back.
It always gets brought back. Or potentially, UFOs. Maybe the little green men are running around, and they've made these crop circles in the national parks that were documented, and now
maybe even that big W word that a lot of people don't like to say.
White people?
White people?
What? No, those people visit national parks all the time, but
yeah, they're the main missing people.
Yeah, the main missing people, but it's that W word that a lot of native cultures don't like to say because it brings bad juju around.
Bad juju.
There's a kind of psychosis that goes with it.
Yeah, we may have covered it at one point.
Yeah, just a little bit.
The Wendigo. Okay. Well, so
good thing I live far away from you.
So I know as far as there is this theory that's out there. Mainly, now maybe Aidan Mattis from the Lore Lodge might have been the pioneer of this theory. He was, as far as what brought it to my attention, but it has definitely branched out, and I've heard lots of people talk about it. I've heard people talk about just there being suspicious things all along, and maybe he's just the first one to really say it, or maybe he's not even the first one to say it. Just for me, he was the first one that brought it to my attention, and definitely for a lot of people, because that is like the thing that kind of like blew up the Lore Lodge channel on YouTube, which I recommend. They're pretty good. He's a student that studies history. And then the other Aiden studies film. So they're both a really good duo with their talking about history and doing a lot of like similar things that we're aiming for with this channel for sure. But they definitely do a lot of the heavy work on research, that's for sure, in ways that like a little much for us probably. But so,
aren't they like both like students of like history though? Like I know,
they have access to all the research materials. It's not fair.
Yeah, they have access to the internet.
Yeah.
I wish I had access to the internet.
Me too.
Yeah. Don't worry, I will allot both you boys at least 1 extra hour this week of internet screen time.
Perfect.
But I think the Lore Lodge is definitely the person to kind of tie it back to Teddy Roosevelt. The very founding of the National Park Act was in an effort to hide something, give space for something. I think he was the one who really kind of brought that back to the origin point. Everyone kind of talks about like the disappearances that occur, or I know Rick before we started the podcast was mentioning that was it your brother Rick who was scaring you with the idea that I know he said Bohemian Grove, but that national parks, this is where the you were saying before the podcast that the rich people use that land that is sectioned off to hunt people like the most dangerous game or
Yeah,
something like that.
or so it was said. I know my brother would always say something about when I was like 10 or 11, like, oh, Bohemian Grove, this is where all the missing children that they kidnap across the United States go, and they hunt them and they do other bad things. I know one of the words we can't really say on YouTube, but they do all that bad stuff there. You need to be careful, kind of story. And I always freaked out because I was always like, oh no, I'm going to be the next. I'm going to be in Bohemian Grove type of deal. But I always, when I grew up, I always thought it was like, older brother just messing with me, but read up a little bit and there's some conspiracies about it. Maybe my brother was one of the first people to hand me a conspiracy theory and made me think about something.
It's kind of funny that Bohemian Grove was one of the first then that entered your minds.
Yeah, because I don't remember anything else conspiracy theory wise that that was before that. Maybe JFK stuff because of the movie JFK, but besides that, I think it was Bohemian Grove.
So let's, for people who may be unaware, like real quick, let's discuss Bohemian Grove as a concept. So there's a 2,700 acres area of land near the Redwoods in California that is sequestered off, and essentially for, what is it, 2 weeks out of the year, most of the powerful men in this country meet up there, and they do elaborate musical theater plays. They do like burning rituals. They have like worship of owls and certain saints, and Alex Jones snuck over there and recorded some footage and claimed they were doing Moloch child sacrifices. And if you know Moloch from the biblical origin point, it was believed to be a god, but some people are starting to think that Moloch was just describing the act of the ritual of child sacrifice, and it's not necessarily a deity.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. Yeah, I know that one's really big for the elite. All the big presidents going, celebrities going. I think Alex Jones specifically said that, like, the Bushes and all
Skull
these
and Bones.
every big president name and everything you'll hear going there.
Maybe that's why Biden dropped out of the race so he could
go be sacrificed.
You never know.
And then I do believe, wasn't it Richard Nixon?
Nixon's in a photograph that you can find on the main Wikipedia page of Bohemian Grove. He's right there.
Do you recall the quote of what he said about it?
I don't remember. What was it?
So I do believe he used one of those special words that we can't say on here. But he said it was the gayest thing he's ever seen in his life. And so he only went once and never again because he said there's just a bunch of gay stuff going on.
Interesting.
So he using like literally gay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, say what you will, he was a criminal, but Nixon was a very based person, I think.
Yeah. I just can imagine him like saying that in his voice.
He's just like, oh, God, this is so gay.
When you're president, it's not gay.
I'm not a crook. And even more so, I'm not gay.
I'm not a homosexual.
Yeah. I think it's kind of funny, we have these we can't deny it. I mean, really what it comes down to, I've been thinking like recently about like the scares that have occurred, the paranoia about the elite and what they do in their rituals, because I don't think you can deny that there's very powerful people and they're all part of the same clubs and the same societies, and they do these yearly rituals, and you can say they're like harmless, but obviously you want privacy for some of that stuff, but this Mr. Hepstein's Island, Bohemian Grove, there's definitely some weird stuff, and I don't think people can truly fathom how much 2,700 acres is. Like, that's a lot of woods, it's a lot of land. You wouldn't be able to hear very much from outside of that location. So
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe they're not doing anything nefarious there. Maybe there's just a big like cattle ranch, but for Sasquatch, and they're going Sasquatch hunting.
It's like
You
that
never
scene
know.
in it's like that Wild Hunt adaptation scene in Hellboy 2019, but they're hunting Sasquatches and they got like the wolf pelt heads and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
That could be interesting. Like they're hunting like cryptids. It's like the king hunting the boar in medieval times.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. Because you know,
prove you're a man when you have all these machine guns. You know,
call it a strike.
calling the airstrike. We got a big one, at
Yeah,
least a 9-footer.
yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, that part was kind of cool, but the rest was gay.
He was ripping off the limbs off of blah 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 blah. You know.
So yeah,
Um,
what could be hiding in these woods? Potential
Yeah.
cryptids, like a preserve. National parks are created to essentially they're like reservations for animals. Really,
didn't Teddy Roosevelt like actually say something about there being something in the woods or something? Am I misremembering that? Let me Google it if you guys don't know what I'm talking about.
probably
don't.
not. But I mean, Teddy Roosevelt had like such a crazy life. He did so much
Yeah.
insane stuff that probably more than like half the presidents combined in terms of his adventures, hunting bears and doing all this crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
But before we move on from Bohemian Grove, what better place to do ancient rituals and ancient things in an ancient forest that has 600-700 foot trees in there? I think it read or something like that.
yeah, ancient
What better
trees.
place? Yeah. What better place than that? But if you talk to normal people, they say it's just an Elks Lodge for the rich, and all they do is just heavy drinking, lots of deal making,
Yeah.
and just hanging out and trying to get away from like their boring normal day professions.
Yeah, that's most likely true. And then they just do like their traditional stuff because you have to have some kind of initiation thing. I remember that was a thing with like Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
With like they have like some kind of don't they have like a humiliating like ritual supposedly where they'll take like photographs of you so that they'll know you're in now because they have like the dirt on you.
Yeah.
They have incriminating evidence,
Mhm.
which is
Of you doing
exactly what Epstein's Island was all about. Like,
Isn't that the same thing with like the Freemasons and stuff like that? Is that we don't know as outsiders exactly what's going on, so our mind kind of like always wanders to the dark and the worst things, trying to like figure out, oh, they're so secretive, so it must be bad, it must be evil or some kind of devil worshipping going on.
Well, and let us remember the pagans were terrified, and some of them were terrified of Christians because, I mean, think about it. You hear about certain rituals, and then you're like, wait, they eat their god? They drink his blood? What?
Yeah.
Like that?
mm,
What? So there's certain things that, they may be symbolic. They're no longer doing specific things, but perhaps the burning of certain things had a more violent origin point, but now it is not violent. It is harmless. But it is just carrying on the ritual significance of it. But it's one of those things where sometimes things can seem pretty strange from the outside.
Yeah. And then, like the whole idea with fire, we think of fire as something like something like bad, like fire and brimstone, burning of things, but we rarely look at it as a thing of like renewal, because there's farms that will burn crops so they give their soil back all the nutrients that that have been taken out from years of farming. And then we have the story about the phoenix, and we rarely look at fire in a positive manner. It's always in a like violent, destructive manner.
Yeah.
So I could see like from an outside perspective, and of course our mind's always going to the worst. We're always going to deem something like that like evil, or something bad.
Yeah.
I see Brandon cooking over there. Do you have what you were talking about?
Oh, this is a whole rabbit hole that I didn't know I should have done research on before. Apparently, he had a
Yeah.
Bigfoot encounter.
Yes. Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
like a killer Bigfoot encounter. Apparently, somebody died in this story.
Interesting.
With
I wonder if that's why he started up the whole reserve and everything like that, trying to.
Well, because people always say, why does nobody ever find Bigfoot? And it's like, well, you're not allowed to go in these areas of the parks.
Yeah.
That's why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it actually perfectly explains it. You know,
Yeah,
up to a certain point, up to Teddy Roosevelt, you know, they had been around, and then maybe they died or were killed off, and the only ones left. Perhaps, you know, if you want to go even farther and assume higher intelligence, maybe they could communicate. And he made him a deal like, listen, you know, I'm the ruler of this country, and you're gonna stay on the, you know, essentially, or like a reservation, like you're gonna stay in this area and not leave it, and you'll be protected, and no one will trespass or harm you. Perhaps something of that sort could have occurred.
No, yeah,
But we will
exactly.
feed you endless amounts of missing people.
Maybe. I mean,
Or if these people come in your land, you can take them.
You can take them, yeah.
yeah, exactly. A whole no trespassing thing. The only
Yeah, because it would be like, well, they violated the law, and since it's not technically our government's land.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. The only thing I could find on there was he did also report hearing noises that did not sound like a man. So probably like some whoops and Bigfoot calls and stuff like that. But it just looks like a story for another time because it's a lot of reading that I can't do right now.
Well, if you're around a bunch of juggalos, you'll hear a bunch of whoop whooping.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's another story.
Maybe it's just juggalos out there.
Yeah, juggalos live having a gathering.
The insane Squatch posse.
But
Yeah.
so as far as what I believe I heard that Teddy Roosevelt said, I'll just be like, Teddy Roosevelt said this. Don't fact check me. He said something. I think I heard him say. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else too, but I'm pretty sure it was Teddy
I
Roosevelt.
heard him say when I
No,
was
yeah,
hanging
this was my good buddy Teddy. So he mentioned something of there's something in these woods, like there being something out of the ordinary, and I don't remember much of the quote other than that. I seems like there's a whole story behind it. But he acknowledges that there is something that isn't quite just, you know, some animal and it's not quite human, but there's something out there. And he was apparently pretty vocal about it. So, yeah, considering that he's the guy that he's like the only president, as far as I know, that has a Bigfoot story, and he's the guy who did the national park system. Coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, he at least believed there was something out there, so doesn't it? I think this is almost like logical. Like if he believed that this thing was out here, and then he makes the National Park Act. Clearly, he believed it enough that might have influenced that.
Exactly. And then, as far as the missing persons cases, if you look at a map of like missing persons cases, there's where all of them kind of like there's hot spots. The hot spots for missing persons is national parks, but not just national parks, near the entrance of cave systems. And so that kind of just makes you wonder what's up with those cave systems. Are people they're just wandering in there and they lose their way, they can't get out? Or is there something more to it? I mean, there's a lot of these stories that people have of weird circumstances of people going missing and they weren't necessarily there to be at a cave. but they did happen to be near a cave system. And I know that there's just a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to caves.
Yeah.
Potentially like the Hollow Earth theory.
can I just say
Isn't that from King
sidebar?
Kong?
Sidebar, yeah, it blows my mind that we had a mainstream franchise like the MonsterVerse just say, "Yep, the Earth is hollow, Hollow Earth confirmed," and like nobody cares, you know?
Nobody batted an eye. They're like, eh.
Nobody batted an eye at it. I was like,
Yeah.
"Huh, okay,
Like, oh, neat.
neat.
Yeah,
He's a big monkey. Who cares?"
big monkey. But yeah, have you guys heard much as far as Hollow Earth theory stuff, or?
I have not.
Somewhat. Again, Hollow Earth is one of those things where I think people lump it in with what I think is one of the dumbest conspiracy theories, which is flat Earth. Sorry, don't at me, but Hollow Earth, at least, like I could maybe understand because, we've talked about how we've navigated so little of the oceans, and there's like these massive trenches and stuff like that. You could maybe not the whole Earth, right? But maybe there are sections of the Earth that have like these expanse. We already know there's expansive cave systems that go down and down and down and down. There's people who catalog them, you know, so like potentially there are sections of the land that have like these underground vast systems, you know.
Mm-hmm. And let's say you're some type of cryptid. You're a Sasquatch. You're a Wendigo, a Mothman, maybe even. You're something of that nature. You want to avoid the public and be elusive. If that's your goal, why would you not go into a cave like during the day or whatever? Or if you're like literally somehow kind of sensitive to sunlight, anything like that, go in a cave. There is a whole nother thing that I listened to recently. Different YouTube channel where it's all about the YouTube channel shout outs today. The Confessionals podcast. Have you guys ever heard of that at all?
I've heard of them.
So it's pretty sure his name's Dave Merkel. His thing's called Merkel Media. And he's all about just interviewing people. And so it's the confessionals, people confessing their story, their cryptid encounter, their interesting theory, you know, stuff like that. Found out about this guy from my sister. Shout out to my sister Kirsten. Our biggest fan.
Undisputed.
Yeah, exactly. So one of these interviews that he had recently on his YouTube channel, I want to go and subscribe to his actual like website, that's kind of like a Patreon or whatever, so I can get the whole interview because it was very interesting. It was talking to a guy. What was his name? I remember his first name was Nathan. But apparently this guy also has a YouTube channel or whatever, and he is kind of like a cult survivor. And he talks about like his family and everything. His family being the like stupid rich people. And all these rituals and things, and how they have to sell their own children in order to keep their wealth. And so it's like they still, you know, they're still connected to their child, but they're selling their child sexually and in all sorts of different forms of abuse. They're putting them into these secret programs and whatnot. And so he talks about how he's just deep in this this crap of his parents just letting him be exposed and abused and put in these training programs for different things. Some of those being like weird things with cryptids, and so he gets into skinwalker stuff and all this like super weird stuff. Very easy for people to be like, oh, this dude's just, batshit crazy. But the way he talks about it, he doesn't really seem like a crazy person, so it's definitely like, I'd hope that he's a crazy person,
Yeah.
And it's just like
there's a lot about that stuff that I don't want to like name drop it yet because we might do a future video, and but there's this whole thing I saw recently about this is kind of related to this, but this ritual self murder because these people don't want to give up a loved one, so they have to like they choose to do that so that they don't have to do that, because they've already they're in too deep essentially with whatever powers you wish to interpret.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I know. So one thing that he talked about, what's funny is he never said the word skinwalker. He was just saying, this is what I was exposed to and everything. And he just described what a skinwalker is, and these rituals, and how as a child he was forced to murder his friend to do this ritual because because you have to murder a loved one. He had no love for his actual family since they were all abusing him, and so they forced him to murder an actual friend, and all this like stuff and whatnot. He talks about literally like these people drinking blood and doing weird rituals around that, and actually transforming into a dog man specifically, and
I was gonna go with reptilians, but
no, yeah, so like
no bingo
dog
for you.
man.
Yeah, he's saying this is all part of like the rituals and everything, and then like because he was like literally talking about how these estates, so they own a lot of acreage, kind of like Bohemian Grove, and they will have their guard dog, who is a man, a dog man, and it's like, and so they have like facilities for this actual person that goes rabid and everything, and they let him loose and like all this stuff, and it's like terrifying. But so he talked about like with this area of all this stuff with his like training and whatnot that he was put through. I don't remember exactly, but it's like they brought him to the cave system, and he's saying that he was kind of touching on Hollow Earth stuff, and how he's just like, there are things in there that live in there that you would not recognize, and he's like, people call them cryptids, but I've seen them and I know where they live, and it's in the Hollow Earth, and like talking about all this stuff. He said like you can, on particular points, you just have to go to like this cave system and shout a particular phrase or like a particular way, like scream like an animal in a certain way, and they will call back to you, and like all this stuff. And he was saying that they come out like at night to hunt and stuff like that. And just like this really bizarre stuff.
Yeah.
I had no idea national parks were the central hub for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the cave systems in the national parks, coming from an act enacted by Teddy Roosevelt. He knew it all. All leads back. Confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sure would be interesting to kind of, if it's possible, I mean, who knows, if you can map these cave systems and like rich people's properties Like, do they have cave systems on their properties? Like,
Yeah.
is there a connection there at all?
I wish we had those machines from Prometheus where you toss them in the air and they like take images and they scan the whole like
Yeah.
Lafrentian system. Like if we had those, and then they can go like underwater, because that's the real thing that holds you back in the like. I think that exploring caves and I don't think I could do it. But the worst part too is that you have to like squeeze down and then go underwater and then come up, and then you have to like squeeze up to like worm your way through. And there's a video I might send you guys later about it, by I think it's Jacob Geller. Very good stuff. But yeah, it's no joke. Those things are very difficult to navigate even with our current technology, because at the end of the day, it's your body that has to squeeze through there.
Exactly. I did go to a national park, like like an actual like tourist attraction type cave thing. I want to say it was called the Ape Caves or something like that. It was in Washington. And like, yeah, it was like a whole hike to like walk through them and everything. And it's been explored a bunch. There's maps, there's all this particular cave system. And it is creepy in there. It is pitch black. Any light source is your own light source that you bring. And I was with a group, so it wasn't like actually scary or anything, and it was a very populated, tourist attraction. Even though it was like a full on like big cave area, and these not super tight corridors but smaller corridors and everything. You had to do like almost like a little bit of rock climbing in a way to get to certain areas and whatnot. And yeah, it's just like I could just imagine, like it's pretty freaky, like just that pitch blackness, like absolute darkness.
Yeah. And our human eyes have like no way of like seeing through that pitch black, but animals do. Something that has a little animal in them.
Or there's the films, The Descent, where it's humans that evolved while being in the cave systems for hundreds and thousands of years, so they don't even have eyes anymore, and it's more about sound. They're pretty much like giant mole rats, essentially.
See, and part of the theory was that it's not a cryptid, but there are feral men. There are offshoot humans residing in these areas, potentially in the cave systems, and they similar to Willow Creek, that film that we reviewed in the first episode of this podcast. The reveal is almost that there's this like subhuman wild contingent that is taking the women or the men for reasons to if your population is too low, you're gonna need to do that at some point. So that was, I remember looking, and that was part of the theory too, is that it's not Sasquatch in the secluded areas. It's these kind of wild men, these feral offshoots.
No, yeah, exactly. Well, there's that other thing that the Lore Lodge I think touched on a little bit. Was it England? Could be wrong. It was a cave system that was discovered in sometime in the medieval period. Some prominent family, royal family or something like that. I don't remember any names or anything, so forgive me. It was one of the sons decided he didn't like society and went off on his own with his wife, and for years. And when he was discovered again a long time after, he had a bunch of children, like a lot of children, and then those children had children with each other. And so there was about 40 of them in total, living in a cave. And and coming out to hunt people and cannibalize them. And then like eventually like they had attacked a person, but that person got away, and then he went and told like the royal court of what was going on. So they're like, oh, take us there and whatnot. And they found bones, they found meat racks, they found everything, like just all the evidence that they needed, the piles of clothes and trinkets and weapons and stuff that they had no need for and whatnot. And they made a judge, jury, and executioner decision in that moment and wiped out the all 40 of them. And this is like a legend, but like kind of based on something that was real. So it's something that could have been exaggerated a little bit along the way through telling the story, but it was something that like actually happened to some degree.
That would be cool if we could find documents on that, like some
Yeah.
kind of papers on that, someone writing a letter to someone.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's because in those old times we don't really have a lot of documented history, so it would make sense if there's like an offshoot of like, if there was a disagreement between the community, party left and made their own offshoot, ungoverned by the rules of the main community, and started doing everything they wanted to do without consequence, and so it'd be interesting to see if maybe that's the start of like some feral people, like maybe a couple hundred years later we see this idea of Sasquatch because these people lived in the woods and they've evolved to need like strength and all this extra hair to survive the cold conditions,
Mm-hmm.
because
Do what thou wilt will be the law of the land. I mean, what? But it reminds you of Nebuchadnezzar from the Bible. He grew like nails and hair, and he went insane because he was cursed.
If you want to get some more biblical things, there is that story. Well, I mean, there's that too. But there's that story of the Kandahar giant. You ever heard about that one?
Is that one of the ones that David and his squad of giant killers killed?
I don't think so. Which thing is that?
So it's this really awesome part of the Bible where when David becomes king, he's like, man, Goliath sure has a lot of relatives that are just like hiding out and being like terrorists. And so he gets like these guys together and they literally just roam around killing all the giants. They just like fight them all and kill them all. It's way cooler than David killing Goliath. It's like, no, we hunted all of them down, all the Nephilim, we got them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I forgot about that being a thing. But no, this one, the only biblical thing is the fact that giants. But no, this is a modern story because it's over Kandahar, which is the Middle East. One of the areas.
Before.
I think we may have talked about it a little bit. I don't know if we talked about it on here.
Was it in the Gen podcast?
I don't think so.
Never mind.
But this was something that America did when they invaded a certain part of the world, the Middle East, and this was Marines. That this was one of those stories that it's can't 100% say that it's true because it's just a bunch of eyewitness accounts that of course got redacted, and there's no official documents of it. It's just eyewitness accounts.
Well, why would you need to redact something unless there was something weird going on?
Yeah, exactly. But it was a fairly simple story. It was that they were something going for whatever reason. They ended up at this entrance to a cave while they were on patrol or whatever, and then I think a giant spear came flying out of it, and I don't I don't want to say that they actually killed any Marines. Might have. I don't remember. Um, but a ginormous red-haired man came out of the cave and saw them, screamed at them, and started charging them. And I think there might have been a little bit more to it, like as far as before the charge. I just don't recall. Um, but so they all ended up lighting him up and killed him, and then reported it. Helicopter came, they put him in a net and took it away, and they never saw it again. And then they were all told to never talk about it, and they took like official like documentations, and then they just like took everything out that had to do with what actually happened. And there was a whole thing with like a pilot came out of the helicopter and talked about it or something. But yeah, that's one of the big the Kandahar giants. If you look that up, that's that one's kind of
Gonna have to.
prevalent on the internet. So it's just a neat little story as well. So who knows how true it is, but I've heard all sorts of little things when it comes to the Middle East and giants in particular. I know I heard a story of, I think it was also the Confessionals podcast, a guy that grew up in the Middle East, and he would go down to like this river, and there was a cave system nearby, and his mother told him to stay away from that cave system or whatever, and stay away from that particular part of the river. And like, so he like didn't listen, went over there, and then I think he heard something or whatever. He left, but then he like comes back, and then there's these like ginormous footsteps, like footprints in the right next to the river where the soil's kind of wet. And he's just like, he saw that and he freaked out, told his mom, and his mom was like, I told you not to go over there for a reason. And like, she never spoke about it like again or whatever. And she was just like very adamant that he never go back there and everything. I think this might have involved something like it killed one of their goats or something like that. But yeah, so all sorts of cave system stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe it was King Kong.
Might have been.
Yeah. Like the thing with cave systems, it's like it's almost like, you're taking the system down into the underworld,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hades presides there,
Exactly. And it's like, what could
We-
be
we-
there?
We always view the underworld, well, sorry, nowadays it's viewed symbolically, but back in the day, like, it must have truly felt like you were going to the underworld when you entered these cave systems. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we can't go too far because we know we'll die, and then our souls will remain down here with Lord Hades or whoever presides,
Mm-hmm.
with Anubis, with all of them,
Well, so that brings up an interesting question of just the fact of like, there's so much stuff when it comes to like the Bible and different beliefs of it all being metaphorical, not necessarily an actual physical thing, but a spiritual thing, a different realm, different plane of existence, all that kind of stuff as far as like trying to understand what heaven or hell is. But I find it very fascinating if you take everything and think about it in a very literal way, and in not only a very literal way but a very physical way of like, what if heaven's real and it's actually a physical place? How does that work? What if hell's real and it's actually a physical place? What we do know about the center of the earth type stuff is it's hot. There's fire down there, and also just the cave systems being complete like darkness and everything. There's descriptions of hell being complete and outer darkness. There's descriptions of hell being the gnawing, gnashing of teeth, burning in hell, yada yada. You've always heard that. So like, what if? What if?
Well, and you maybe heaven is spiritual, but it was said that he was given power and dominion over the world, over the earth itself, over the air. The Lucifer. Maybe hell is physical, and heaven is spiritual, and that's why the world. If you take a certain uh, um, approach to it, as some denominations have, the world would be a place of sin, and so we need to escape it. And so perhaps the earth itself, like, yeah, this cave system leads down to the the lake of fire is at the center of the earth. And the Mormons, again, people make fun of them for literalizing heaven as collab. But making it, because there were points in history where they did genuinely believe we're in the middle. The Norse believe this too. We're in the middle, and then the underworld is below us, and heaven is literally out in space, like it's in the stars.
No, yeah. And what is it? Mormons believe in like 3 tiers of heaven specifically.
Yeah. So very interesting.
Yeah.
It is very interesting. And I don't know if this is true, but I just remember hearing things about how like our ancestors have descended from the caves, So what's to make you think that where we are living now, here on the Earth's crust on top, is heaven, and the further we descend below is hell,
See, I thought you were gonna say, what if it's not? It's and it's an extension of the. I've heard something about this with relation to flat Earth. Is that have you heard of like the bubble effect, like the worlds within worlds concept? It kind of goes macro with like something like where it's like we're on the head of a pin that is in a larger world. Like the whole universe is like a microbe on like a larger universe and like the microbes are actually just a universe that is small compared to us.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
this
I've heard
idea
about
that the cave system leads down and we're actually on the bottom, and to go into the earth you're going up, like weird shit like that.
I mean, that also
Well,
just
Men in
makes
Black
me
2 type thing.
yeah, that makes me think of the end of Men in Black.
Yeah.
No,
It's a very easy way to make people understand the concept of the nested worlds, as you show them that scene at the end.
Well, so
Yeah.
that thing that's just so interesting is the fact that every belief, like you're talking Norse, you're talking Egyptian, you're talking Greek, the underworld, they all call it that.
Yeah.
That's got to mean something,
Yeah. I mean, it's true. There is this association, and the sea, the darkness. It is where things hide and reveal themselves, and then the air, the sky. It's like clear, and the divine comes from above this realm. And we're being fought over by both, and we're in the middle. We have a spark of the divine, but we have the shadow of hell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a quick question. Maybe you guys know this, maybe not. Were the catacombs in France created by humans, or were they a cave system already put in place?
That's a really good question.
See, I don't know that.
Let me Google it real quick.
I'm willing to bet that a good amount of that was there, and they put the tombs in, because I know there's sections where they literally slot the tombs into the wall. Like they would chip out the wall and slot the tombs in. But I mean, that's
there's a lot of people that go missing in the catacombs, and there's a lot of places where you can't fit into physically, so it makes me think that these might have been like little caves that were already like, pre-made, and they just kind of like built into them.
Okay. This thing says catacombs are human-made underground passages primarily used for religious purposes, particularly for burial. They were originally built by an aristocratic Roman family intended for their use. The catacombs of Rome, which date back to the 1st century, were constructed as underground tombs by Jewish and Christian communities.
Interesting. So that actually makes sense. So you look at the Jewish and the Judeo-Christian perception of hell. They were down there carving out the tombs for these pagan overlords for their royal bloodlines, and so they would be down there a lot, these workers, and you can see this like cultural development of this idea of how they perceived, because again, a lot of people think of hell as burning, but that's really only the lake of fire. That's like the final punishment. Really, Sheol in the Judaic tradition, Sheol is darkness. It's like separation from the light of God. So these guys carving away these catacombs to make these tombs for the dead, they're surrounded by pitch black darkness,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yikes.
That only talks about the Roman ones, doesn't talk about the actual like ones in France though.
So the Paris ones, this thing says the Paris catacombs were founded in the 18th century in response to 2 secular problems: sinkholes and a surplus of dead bodies. Initially a disorganized bone repository, they were later transformed into a mausoleum and became a popular tourist attraction. Yeah, sinkholes. I haven't heard that aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Why would there be sinkholes?
We're gonna have a whole nother episode for this Paris catacomb deep dive.
Yeah,
I think Paris Catacombs could be its own episode for sure.
Yeah.
They've made whole horror movies on the Paris Catacombs.
Mm-hmm. As Above, So Below. That's actually fairly solid found footage horror movie.
Yeah,
I remember seeing it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Yeah, no. I mean,
that. So we're looking at the whole like national parks and the the system here. What do you guys think is like the most like common idea of what you two would believe that is the actual reason for these national parks? If there's, say, cryptids or hunting ground or a farm for Sasquatch to grow in population, because maybe they were overhunted over the years. What do you think? Because I read this article that there are certain places in these public lands that we still cannot go to because we were stopped by park rangers or other forest rangers, and we cannot still go to these areas. And then me and Brandon have even read a story from, a couple weeks ago. I don't know if we've posted it yet, but it's a story about these kids that go out into the woods and they meet this lady, that tells them which direction to go back to their camp, because the story is that they were lost forever, and to them they felt like they were lost for a long, long time. But then when they got back to the camp, they were only gone for, I think it was like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it felt like hours to them, and then like even the time on their phones and watches was saying that they were gone for hours.
Yeah,
temporal soft spot.
Yeah.
So, do you think that national parks may be like some kind of hot ground for all these temporal soft spots, or maybe some kind of like crossing into dimensions?
Okay, so that's a very good question, because when it comes down to Skinwalker Ranch, the thing that's interesting about Skinwalker Ranch is it's like, it's a hot spot for activity, all sorts of stuff. And my parents, my dad, has been watching like Skinwalker Ranch, the show and stuff. And he's just like, there's times that he'll be like, oh, this is stupid. He'll turn it off, but then he'll like come back to it and be like, oh, what's going on here? But the thing that's interesting is what the stuff that pops out, and stands out to him, and really is like kind of has become the main content of the show, is the fact that there is legit differences in the magnetic like field around that area. There is environmental anomalies over there, in the regard of weird magnetic things, but also, I know they had like it was like a 3D map scanner thing. So it was like something that was scanning the area to create a 3D map for it. And so, it's scanning these rock formations, and it's building, these digital copies of the rocks, so they can have an actual like 3D map that they can make plans with and go around with everything. And the 3D scanner picks up something that's like in the sky in the middle of the ranch, that's like this just blob, this big like structure that's just there, but like obviously there's nothing there, but the 3D scanner is picking it up though. So it's like there's something that was messing with the scanner and whatnot. And they had several different like experiments and different methods of doing kind of the same thing of like a 3D scan, where they had pretty much the same thing happen. Like with they were doing some with lasers and like all sorts of stuff, and they were picking up that there was something in the sky above just the center of the ranch. And it's like, no idea what that means, but there's some sort of difference in the air, or whether maybe it's just the whole magnetic structure, whatever. But it's just, it's an anomaly, and it's like unseen, but it's something about the land and the environment that is different from just your normal like other ranches and whatnot. So
I was trying to see if Skinwalker Ranch was located near Zion, but it's not. I was like, oh, there's a national park next to it.
Yeah,
but
maybe that one was missed. But like, so there's also a thing I recall seeing from the show was there is a rock structure that, it's like, who put this rock structure here, blah blah blah. I don't recall it. It's not like huge, but it's big, where it's like a weird spiral. If you look at it down with a drone, it's like this spiral. And there was a part on the show where they had like their thermal camera, just like wide, trying to show the whole land. And then they had these Native Americans come out and do I don't remember what the goal was, what they were doing, but they were doing a ritual, a chant, and they're doing their drums and everything. And as it's going, you see in the distance, the spiral starts to heat up. Now, that could be fake. They could have faked that for the show. Who knows? I don't know. But that's interesting. What does that mean? I don't know. So what all this kind of points to me, as far as like these weird unseen things that aren't even necessarily, it's not an entity, it's just something about the environment, that kind of like says portals to me.
Yeah,
especially the whole spiral and it heating up, that sounds like portals. So if there's these portal hotspots that are spread out around the United States, I mean, around the world, but And if somehow we're aware of them, and maybe those are where these national parks, like where you can't go type things. I mean, who knows? But that's almost like what my mind goes to, as far as like, why does it have to be right here?
Yeah.
That means something was there before whatever it is that you're doing. You
Yeah,
didn't create it. You got something going on, but you're there for a reason if you're blocking people out from having access to it or whatever.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's like what was there before Skinwalker Ranch, if what's like the recorded history beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that was interesting that I looked at, because I was looking at national parks, uh, Skinwalker Ranch is kind of between two different ones. It's like there's a Zion in Utah, and then right above in Wyoming, there's the Grand Tetons in Yellowstone. So maybe there's some kind of like energy that
Is the Tetons? I don't really know much about that. That's in Yellowstone. So is that connected to the whole the like volcanic system or whatever that's over there?
yeah, the Grand Teton National Park. It's I think it's the same national park that that like the Old Faithful is in. Or remember
Okay.
right?
So that
Oh, Yellowstone National Park is where Old Faithful is, and Grand Tetons are like right below it.
okay.
They're about 30 miles apart.
Okay. So pretty
Yeah,
close.
yeah,
So then, so wait, you pointed out those three because what, they're in like a line, like.
yeah. They're kind of in like some kind of weird line because pull out the map. So
So
Zion is at the bottom of Utah, and then at the very like top corner where there's like a right angle on Salt Lake is Skinwalker Ranch.
okay,
And then above that, if you keep going straight, is the Grand Teton National Park. And then above that is Old Faithful. Above that is Yellowstone.
interesting.
Yeah.
Almost
And
almost sounds like something to do with tears. And
yeah, and I lost my spot where Skinwalker Ranch is though, but I believe it's in a national forest where it's located, but I'm not sure. I lost my spot of where it was. Let me look it up.
Josiah, you've been awfully quiet this last little bit.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I'm
it's right below a national forest too. So it's pretty interesting how it's like almost lines up.
going back to what Rick was asking initially. I think odds are there are certain animals or plants, there are certain things that just shouldn't be disturbed, and they have to sequester it just for preservation reasons. But I think that I find it compelling the reservation theory.
I was just thinking about that.
I think it's, to disagree with the Lore Lodge. He was viewing it as the walkers, the Wendigos, being contained, but that doesn't really seem feasible. Like, these areas would be walled off,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you're trying to contain something, why would you just say like, well, no one go here?
Yeah, because he talked about them being tricksters too, how they would trick you into thinking that they're part of your group and
Yeah,
play with your mind. And it's like, if they're able to do that, then how did
yeah.
we trick them into being in part of these like reservations?
So to me, an agreement made between two groups is the most compelling.
Mm-hmm.
And you can argue, with obviously I'm not saying that all the native tribes agreed and were like, oh yeah, I'm all for this. Obviously there was there was things that went down, but it could be a similar situation. They were given no choice. Like, hey, like this is, we're not going to wipe you out, but we're going to allow you, whatever you are, whether it's Sasquatch, we're going to allow you this land. And it's beautiful, untouched land. No one will interfere. But if someone interferes on your property, who's going to know?
Yeah.
We're not going to go looking for them. People get lost all the time.
Yeah. Especially in these big forests.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps these lands were given to them because they are significant ritualistically because of the energy there or the portals there or etc. And perhaps it ties it all together. It is really interesting. I feel like, it's kind of the joke that we often go on tangents or we incorporate a lot of stuff, but I really feel like this is one of those bedrock things where Bohemian Grove, Skinwalker Ranch, portals, Hollow Earth, Hell, Heaven, Sasquatch, Skinwalkers. It all comes together.
Yeah.
And Teddy Roosevelt, God bless him, but I want to know the truth, damn it. There's like some lost pages of the journal of Teddy Roosevelt of like more Bigfoot encounters or something.
Yeah.
One idea I just had that just popped into my head. How about if in some of these lands that are protected that we can't go to, grows certain items that could be life-saving things for us, that could be cures for cancer or help cure for cancer, could be things like that, could save our world, maybe find the fountain of youth in a sense. What about if Teddy Roosevelt was like, we can't let the population get a hold of this, we're starting big pharma early, type of deal.
Yeah.
What if, there's these plants there that are from a different dimension that could help with this, and they're like, no, we can't let humans get a hold of these because they might use them for nefarious use, or they could cure cancer, they could cure world hunger, they could cure everything. What would be the gain of us getting these? It would solve a lot of problems that we'd have, but
No, yeah.
It's just really tough to it's just one of those things where my mind wanders, is like, what could be hidden there? Could it be some life-saving things that could lead us to some kind of utopia that they don't want us to have?
So I have a question. Obviously, it's probably not allowed, but are you able to fly drones over that area? Like if it's a public national park and then you go to the edge of the off-limits area, can you fly a drone over it? Or
you can't get as far as I know, some areas, I mean, more so as far as like Antarctica, there's spots that you can't get Google Maps images.
Antarctica is a whole thing. In fact, Antarctica is something where I'm gonna bring my brother on for the Antarctica one because he goes deep on that. That's just insane.
Fair.
So to answer your question, Brandon or Josiah, the NPS prohibits the use of drones in national parks, including launching, landing, or operating them. The ban applies to all 417 national parks, 23 trails, 16 rivers managed by the NPS, as well as wilderness area wildlife refuges managed by other federal agencies.
No, yeah.
The ban was issued June 2014.
Yeah, so I know a couple different professional drone operators, and and I've been there. I've worked with drones and everything, and the drone will literally because it has all the mapping and everything in the hardware. It'll literally pop up with a warning message of you're near airport, you're near and whatnot, and it has a kill switch that if you go into there, it'll turn off. So it's it's not even a matter of ooh, I'm gonna break the rules and do it. You literally can't.
No, I assumed that was the case. It's just of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't quiet the the suspicions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like with a lot of this stuff, that one thing that people don't really think about is just how big everything is. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially America. Like
America is such a massive country. I don't think people
mhm.
realize.
Exactly. Like there's a reason that America was the desired land and people were fighting for it. And then there's a reason that the people that ended up controlling America became the superpower. It is
The
the,
people.
yeah, the,
Yeah.
some might call it the promised land. Um, which is a Mormon thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think yeah, there's so many possibilities. I mean, these areas can go in so far deep that you can't see that far. So it's like anything could be out there type thing. But
Yeah, trees are so dense in all of
exactly.
them. Really.
But going uh back to the reservation theory, which I really like. The thought of an agreement made. This is your land here. We'll stay over here, and we'll kind of like prevent people from coming into your land. But yada yada yada. So I had a thought that popped up uh, when Josiah was talking about it. Um, the Fae. So the Fae, that is a whole thing that's very specific to like Ireland and England and Scotland and that area of the world. But if you want to get into, the whole world's connected, a lot of this stuff is kind of the same thing, yada yada. Um, the idea of something like that. So the Fae are talked about. We talked about them a little bit on our special like Leprechaun and Jinn episode. Um, it's a very long and deep rabbit hole that we're definitely gonna have to dedicate a whole episode to one of these days. But the Fae are like a whole nother race, fairies and leprechauns and like all this stuff. They're kind of like, they all kind of blend into each other as far as the fact that like, oh, they're separate things, but not really. They're just different types, almost just like the fact of like there's different races of humans. It's just the Fae are all the same, but they're just a little bit different. The big thing with them is there's all this folklore of the Fae used to live amongst man and were prosperous and all this stuff. There's different versions, but like there's like talk of like, oh, there was a war between man and the Fae. The Fae lost and were banished to the underground, and
They were told to keep to the woods, and then we started chopping the woods down.
exactly. So like that's always like a big folklore thing of they were told to keep to the woods and like but then we started encroaching on their territory after we already banished them to that territory, and all that stuff. So it's just like this idea of like, that's your land, we'll stay away from it. I don't know. And if this land is also connected to underground systems and all this stuff, so kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's just interesting too because like, all of this probably started too is when all the continents were merged together, and
Mm.
technically, there was no separation at one point, but as the continents drifted further apart, there was separation. That's why we get like certain parts of like, South America and certain parts of Africa like fit perfectly together, and their mountainous regions like line up almost perfectly, and their like forest regions would line up perfectly.
Well, putting aside divine intervention, what this
Yeah.
suggests to me, because we see all these cultures with the chaos serpent, the underworld, there's all these similar archetypes, similar, not identical, but the same concepts in all these different cultures that wouldn't really realistically have been able to meet. It suggests to me that perhaps human culture and these legends, whether you believe them or not, go back far, far, far more into the past than we originally believed.
Yeah.
When it was a supercontinent and we all had similar things that were passed down, and then as the continent split, perhaps a Bigfoot, perhaps a Yeti over here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Fae, the Jinn, it's all the same thing, but because we're separated now.
And if you think
Yeah.
about it, we're always told too that human civilization all started in, Africa,
Mhm.
or, depending on where you want. Some people say it started in the Middle East. If everything was put together, it was all Africa. It was all Middle East, So what makes you think that that's not where like civilization started? And then as the continents drifted apart and the further and further we went without time, and we weren't probably ones to record history, we forgot about all those connections.
It was all oral tradition from what we can tell.
Yeah.
Till about 80,000 years ago, which is a blip in history. It's almost nothing. So, who knows? Perhaps there was an ancient pact with certain people. Certain creatures and cryptids.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it makes like, total sense why like almost every big like civilization has like a pyramid. Every big civilization believes in like the same like few things. Every civilization has like the one item for life, the bread of life, type of deal. So it makes you think like we're all together as one, but as they slowly drifted apart, they each forgot about like their traditions. Oh.
Is that a thing? If you
Yeah.
I don't know.
There you go.
Okay.
You guys are not cool enough.
You
No,
got the Fae magic. What?
I
yeah,
do.
that was crazy. You're doing
Whoa.
a love spell.
There you go. But to finish the thought, it's like, we all of our big civilizations have similar things, like the way that they like had sacrifice for their gods. Each of their gods look like certain things. Where like Aztec culture, they had Quetzalcoatl. The bird in the air. Where we go to Egyptian culture, we had what was it, Ra? Was it Ra the bird?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of birds in Egyptian.
I
But
thought Ra had to do with the
Yeah.
sun as well.
And then
he does.
Which is also Aztecs. They have their sun god as well.
Yeah.
So.
And then we had the Norse gods that had their god of gods, who was like the god that had like the crows.
Yeah.
So
so that's another like really interesting thing is all these different cultures with their deities and whatnot, very elemental based. And the Fae is all about elemental based. There is literally elementals in the Fae lore. And then there's also just like them being magical creatures and having possession of different types of magic, elemental magic and everything. But then that's just every culture has magic. Every single culture does this, like some type of magic, whether it's witchcraft or elemental magic or all these different things. But then like witchcraft gets into the elemental magic stuff. So it's just there's black magic, voodoo magic, like. Every culture just has these roots in each other because it was once all connected. So
it just makes you just interested, like how everything's connected. I like to go like talk about a spot that I remembered about Lore Lodge. He talked about how us humans were afraid of things that are almost human-like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like sunken eyes, long face. I think it was like very, very like fair skin.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and each of our cultures were afraid of this kind of type of looking cryptid or monster. We even use them, or even some cultures you have used that shape for war. You know, they wear masks that are like long in shape with sunken eyes and the whole idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that like these type of like looking almost human monsters could be like almost like fey like creatures?
I mean,
You
yeah.
know,
So Lore Lodge's theory with that is that when something's human but not quite human, there's something off about them, but it shares very similar features. The
yeah,
uncanny valley, that we are terrified of that because it's built into our DNA, because it's like an actual scientific thing that the things that you're scared of, that you fear, are in your DNA, because once upon a time that thing was an actual predator, and
Or Cro-Magnons.
or that, yeah,
yeah,
just something that threatened your life, essentially. So the theory is we're afraid of the long-faced, pale, sunken eye imagery because there was a creature that looked like that, or something like that, something that was close to humans but wasn't humans, and preyed on humans. So it's in our DNA to be afraid of that sort of thing.
And we have visceral fears, spiders and snakes. And there's evidence with the increased CO2 levels, things used to be a lot bigger. So the spiders were larger, the snakes were larger, but also, the venom. But the uncanny valley, yeah, it seems like perhaps there was some sort of nightmarish, vampiric, possibly creature of
So
the night,
so
something of the night,
what I would
the dark.
pose as a counter argument to that is like, yes, correct. We're afraid of that because of that being a thing. Uh, Demons.
yeah,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is yeah, as I'm saying, like it can be multiple things. Demons, any kind of creature. Again, I think the paleness comes from possibly being in a cave or out of the sun. The thing that haunts at night. That's why we're scared of the dark, because we know that part of that's just instinct. If you can't see your surroundings, but
Or just back to the W word, white people.
and you know, like what's like the one of the major cryptids that we've talked about that has like that gaunt
White
look?
people.
the Weeningos.
Yeah,
The
and
dingy boys.
The
Mr.
dingoes.
Mr. Lodge himself talked about that as the prominent idea of what's in our national forest. You know,
Yeah.
and it he kind of grouped the people are
Yeah,
gonna get upset, but he grouped skinwalkers and Sasquatches and the W word together.
Well, so I think one thing that is very interesting is that was very early on in his YouTube career, that particular video.
Or he
So
was named
yeah, so I
like
think there was like a lot of, like, when it comes to cryptids, just research that he didn't do
yeah,
at that time. So I think that is part of the reason he lumped it all together. But I mean, lumping it all together is kind of not that far fetched, because they're so they all share common
similar
traits.
characteristics.
Hmm.
Yeah, but like the idea of the skinwalker being able to trick you, and me and Brandon have read another story in the past about a mimic. It mimics his uh mimicked my mother's voice.
Hmm.
This girl and her friend were downstairs, and upstairs she thought her mother was home, and it mimicked her voice almost perfectly, but the girl could, you know, hear a slight variance on the mom's voice that didn't sound right, so it stopped her from going upstairs.
Well, so one thing that I do actually find very interesting about this is because it's back to connecting a lot of these things together.
Yeah.
The whole idea of Wendigos, skinwalkers, and all these interesting things.
Yeah.
Those are humans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there's the feral people
Yeah.
argument of there's feral people out there. Well, what do you think a skinwalker is or a Wendigo is? It's a feral person.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I think it all fits, you know. It's men that have chosen a dark path and just turned themselves into beasts, you
Yeah.
know. They run on all fours and
Animalized.
act like beasts, and do terrible things and have no compass of morality and whatnot, and do everything to act like an animal, but yet they look like a human. I mean, that's another thing when it comes to the whole DNA thing of what we're afraid of. A person acting like an animal is one of the most terrifying things, and
Yeah.
that's
I don't know
portrayed
what
a
you're
lot.
talking about. I don't know
Almost
what you're
feels
talking
like
about.
ugly.
I see them walking around all the time.
Oh, you're talking about the sheep?
What?
Um, so it made me think about something else, talking about how everything like kind of groups together and how everything's coming all together. Where do all these like rituals for the walkers always end up?
In caves,
In caves.
like always.
Yeah.
There's this one video where it was this Navajo guy and his brother takes him to where there was a great battle with this coven of skinwalkers, and then like lightning hit the trees, and he like shows them they go up to the cave, and there was like these like a whole cave system underneath of like these little holes that tunnels under the ground and stuff. But that's
Yeah.
where the rituals are held in secrets in caves.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I watched this video a while ago. I don't know if Brandon sent this to me or what, but it was like these two natives were taking this gentleman to a cave that was known for skinwalkers to live in and do rituals. And as they were walking up to the cave, they found like little pieces of bone from animals or other things. And the natives would only take them up to like a certain part because they said if they went in, there wouldn't be like a safe bet that they would come out as themselves, you know, or they would make it out. So they'd only be able to see the opening of the cave, and he's like, "This is where the skinwalkers come from in our culture." And it just looked like a normal huge cave opening, like I could just walk straight in there and something normal. But for a culture that is strong in these beliefs, that's almost like descending into hell in a sense.
Very dangerous.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, so one thing, not to have another thing to deep dive into, but there is I don't know if you'd call it a theory, but just an idea as far as certain translations that I've heard about, that the act of a sacrifice always involves eating the sacrifice, no matter, that's literally part of a sacrifice. And so biblically, when you're sacrificing your goat to God or whatever, essentially what these sacrifices all are is like you're praying over a barbecue, and you're sacrificing the cow or the goat or whatever, and then the communities.
Why a lot of cultures pray over dinner too?
Yeah, probably. Like, so it's like, so it is the sacrifice. It's not just that you killed the thing and burnt the thing. You all partake. You eat it, and so that is another reason why human sacrifice is even more abhorrent, because it involves cannibalism.
Yeah.
And I mean, the idea, so you're sacrificing to a deity. You're participating in cannibalism for a deity. That's part of the same ritual for skinwalkers. You know, there isn't necessarily always cannibalism involved with skinwalkers, but it's just these different things with murder involved with skinwalkers. But then Wendigos, it's literally always cannibalism, and you're then being possessed by a spirit. You could argue a deity. And so it's just like all these connections of sacrifices and spiritualism, sacrifices actually being eating and partaking in. So the act of eating is some form of a spiritual thing. And so the act of eating a person is just the beyond dark, like just evil spiritual. It's more than just what you're doing. There is a actual spiritual context and damnation involved with it, and you are summoning something when you're doing that. You're opening a portal,
Yeah.
maybe with your mouth, when you're doing that.
Okay, Brandon, we get it. You're vegan. You don't have to push your compliance head.
Oh, I'm very much not
I
vegan.
I saw the beast open his mouth and 3 frog spirits came forth. So, do we have any closing thoughts on national parks, Theodore Roosevelt, cave systems, Bohemian Grove, the rituals, the reservations, anything about this? Do we have, Skinwalker Ranch? Do we have any thoughts?
Is there a cave system connected to the Bohemian Grove property?
It's near the redwoods, so I'm guessing there might be something. Let's check it out.
The Redwoods has ginormous trees. I've been to the Redwoods.
Me too.
They're pretty cool, not gonna lie. I don't know. That kind of sounds like there could be some sort of fae connection. I don't know. Big trees, having a natural environment that flourishes because of the entities that reside within them, the elemental connection. I don't know. I'm just kind of
And they
spitballing here.
looks like they worship to like some kind of owl
Mm-hmm.
deity or statue.
You're just talking about the Bohemian Grove thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's another interesting thing because there's a lot of owl stuff always being like some form of demonic incorporated with it. So the owl is a whole nother deep dive for another video, that's for sure.
All right.
But I subscribe to the idea that the Fae are on these national park reservations. And when it comes down to it, the Fae is just another word for ultimately the same thing, which is something we don't quite understand. So just calling it the Fae for now works. But I would just say that the idea of the Fae is not something that is strictly Ireland and that side of the world. That kind of stuff is everywhere. So.
There's a 3-hour drive to the nearest cave system to Bohemian Grove.
Is that from the edge of the Bohemian Grove, or
From the town it takes part in.
Oh, that's not that bad. If it's 2,700 acres and it's at the town,
It's because the Monterey is on, basically on the coast, the Pacific Ocean coast of California. On one side of Sacramento, and the other side of Sacramento is where the other cave system is. That's how. So it's about 170 miles difference.
Okay.
And the cave system is in the El Dorado National Forest, it looks like.
The best Disney movie ever made?
It was DreamWorks. Sorry.
Whatever, close enough. Oh, well, that
And failed
explains
them.
everything, actually, because it's not Disney.
Yeah.
Disney owns them, so whatever.
So yeah, it's about a 3-hour drive, but it looks like there's national forests galore in between, like around Sacramento as well. So
Not the forests.
forests. Ooh, and we didn't even talk about the supposedly there's a U.S. Department of Mythical Wildlife too. We didn't even get to talk about
Oh,
that.
well,
We have to save
that
that for another episode.
that'll be saved.
I
We've
forgot
already
about
added
that.
like 5 more topics.
Save.
Save. Well,
Shame.
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 Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Fictitious Dark Podcast. I have been Josiah.
I'm Rick.
I was Brandon once upon a time.
And please like and subscribe and share the video. And if you have any comments or questions or suggestions, we would be happy to take them. And
And always correct us too when we're wrong.
yes, please do.
But they think we're wrong on everything, so, I mean.
Yeah.
Well, sleep well out there and hope that this dark truly is fictitious.
And there's not a cave under your house.
I heard a knock at my window earlier, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. It was just Katie.
Did you meet Katie near a cave system by chance?
No.
Bye, guys.
Bye.